I am Hridhu Lakshmi and I'm a final year student at Miranda House, University of Delhi. And today I will be talking about the situation of women and children in conflict zones around the world. This is a very important topic because conflict affects millions of people, especially the most vulnerable groups such as women and children. Conflict aggravates pre existing patterns of discrimination against women and girls, exposing them to heightened risks of violation of their human rights. Some of these violations include gender based violations such as killings, torture, sexual abuse, and forced marriage. Women and girls are primarily and increasingly targeted by the use of sexual violence, including as a tactic of war. Gender based violence also spikes in post conflict societies due to the general breakdown of the rule of law, the availability of small arms, the breakdown of social and family structures, and the kind of normalization of gender based violence as an additional element of pre existing discrimination. Violations also include the lack of access to essential services, that is, healthcare, education, and even livelihood. Women and girls face greater challenges in accessing reproductive health services, education opportunities, and alternative sources of income during and after conflict. They are at greater risk of unplanned pregnancy, maternal mortality and morbidity, severe sexual and reproductive injuries, and contracting sexually transmitted infections as a result of conflict related sexual violence. Girls, especially young girls, can also face additional obstacles in accessing education due to fear of targeted attacks and threats against them, and to the additional caregiving and household responsibilities that girls are often obliged to assume. Women are also forced to look for alternative sources of livelihood as family survival becomes dependent heavily on them. One other kind of violation is the displacement and loss of housing and land. Women and girls are often forced to flee their homes and communities due to violence and insecurity. They may lose their property rights, face difficulties in obtaining documentation and legal assistance. And yes, these legal assistance and the kind of property rights, losing of land, and everything is somewhat, it affects everyone, not just women and children. But women and children are in a much extreme condition because of their experience of violence and exploitation in camps or host communities while they are displaced. And the best example that I can give you is the partition of India and Pakistan, where people were displaced, and the women who were traveling had to, or maybe traveling from one country to the other, or like the people who were displaced, or the children who got lost, had to face all kinds of sexual abuse, rape, and abduction. The situation also dire for children in conflict zones. According to Save the Children, an international non-governmental organization, 1 in 6 children worldwide live in conflict zones where they face threats such as death, injury, hunger, disease, abduction, and sexual abuse. Some of the impacts of conflict on children include physical and mental trauma. Children who are exposed to these violence and stress can suffer from long-term psychological effects such as depression, anxiety, and behavioral problems. They also face problems of malnutrition and disease. The children are more likely to suffer from hunger, infections, preventable diseases due to lack of food, water, sanitation, and healthcare. Children in conflict zones They tend to drop out of school and they tend not to complete their education due to attacks on schools, displacement, and even poverty. This can affect their learning outcomes, future prospects, and social development. And one of the major thing that affects children badly, all these things do badly affect children, but I believe one of the worst thing is child marriage and child labor. Children in conflict zones are more likely to be married off or forced to work at an early age. This can also create interruption of education, and children are married off and forced to work as a coping mechanism or a survival strategy for themselves or their families. This can further expose them to more abuse, violation, and exploitation. So, these are some of the challenges that women and children face in conflict zones. But they are not passive victims, they are also the agents of change, resilience, and peace. They have rights, they have needs, and aspirations that must be respected and fulfilled. They have voices that must be heard and amplified. That is why we need to take action to protect and empower women and children in conflict zones. And there are certain things that we need to do for it. First, advocate for the prevention and resolution of conflicts and the respect for international humanitarian law and human rights law. Second, support humanitarian responses that are gender sensitive, child friendly, and inclusive of the needs and perspectives of women and children. Third, which I believe is the most important one, is through the promotion of the participation and leadership of women in peace building processes, decision making, and governance. Fourth, invest in long term development programs that address the root causes of conflict, such as poverty, inequality, injustice, and discrimination. And more than all of this, we can also support organizations that work on the ground to provide humanitarian assistance, protection, and advocacy for women and children in conflict zones. We can donate, we can volunteer, and even campaign for their causes. We can also express our solidarity and our empathy with women and children in conflict zones by sending messages of support, encouragement, and hope. We can also celebrate their achievements, resilience, and contributions to peace. These are some of the ways that we can get involved and make a positive impact. There are many more. The most important thing is that we do something, because every action counts and every action matters. Thank you so much.